Welcome to the course. We're going to get started with some few basic principles that you need to understand about how learning works and different approaches to learning. Now, most of you probably have never even heard of different approaches to learning. You may have heard of different techniques, you may have heard of different strategies, you may have heard of spaced repetition or active recall or doing flashcards or different ways to write your notes, and those are all good and they're all techniques, and yes, they have their place, but actually there are some fundamental ways of looking at learning that actually make a very big difference, and many of the techniques that we teach throughout the mini course that you're about to go on to soon, as well as our full course, a lot of these techniques are based on different approaches to speed things up. So the way that we look at it is that instead of learning to ride your horse faster to win the race, what we're teaching you is that you could actually bring a car, in the analogy sense, bring a gun to a knife fight. And so we're trying to change the way that you view learning. So there's a few things that we need to understand. And the first thing that I actually want to talk about is the idea of learning through repetition and memorization, and why that is very unsustainable when it comes to not only learning when you're at the lower levels in high school, but especially so when you're in university or later years, and getting used to that system and getting really good at learning that way is not going to get you very far. So let's actually have a very quick look at what I mean here. So there's this very famous curve. It's called the forgetting curve, and we will talk about this a little bit more in the course as well. However, it says that when you learn something, let's say that's this blue dot, we learn something for the first time, we actually forget this information very quickly. And so our knowledge, which is on the y-axis, over time on the x-axis, reduces very, very quickly. And then if we were to repeat that information, let's say the green arrow immediately after that or shortly after that, our rate of forgetting the information would be a little bit slower. And then if we were to learn it again sometime later in red, we would actually forget it slower still. So obviously this is a good thing. We're able to learn something, and through repetition, or in this case spaced repetition, or more specifically because the gap between each repetition is increasing, this is expanding gap spaced repetition, we're able to increase our level of retention because we're able to hold on to this information more. Makes sense so far, right? Nothing wrong with this, and this is indeed a very good principle to use, and if you're not using this already, you definitely should be. However, there's a problem with this, in that it definitely requires this level of repetition, and it depends on this curve here. And so obviously if we are forgetting things very, very quickly, then we are going to need to repeat it relatively soon in order to hold on to that information. And so if we're able to change this curve so that instead of forgetting it this quickly, we can actually shift this curve up so that the first time we learn it, we're actually forgetting it much more slowly, then it means that we don't need some of these repetitions. We can actually repeat it much less and still have the same level of retention at the end of the day. And so a lot of the time spent studying is actually wasted because that time is spent on simply repeating and relearning the things that we've already forgotten. However, when we look at this, we will quickly realize that that is not sustainable. And the reason is because of something called the Leitner system. So the Leitner system is a method of spaced repetition that allows us to prioritize the information that we forget more often. So for example, let's call this box number 1, box number 2, and box number 3, and box number 4. We take a piece of information that we've learned the first time, and we might repeat this initially, let's say 4 hours later. And if we get it correct, then we would repeat it again later, let's say 12 hours later. So this gap is 12 hours. And then we repeat it again, and then this gap is now, let's say 24 hours, and then we repeat it if we get it correct one more time, and then the next time we repeat it, maybe it's 1 week away. But then what happens if we get it wrong? So if we get it wrong, we actually go back a box. So at any point, if we get it wrong, we go back a box. So if we got it right at the beginning, after 4 hours, then 12 hours later, we need to repeat it again. If we get it wrong, then it goes back and we need to do it again in 4 hours. If we get it right, 12 hours later, we get it right again, and then we repeat it again in 24 hours. We get it wrong, then we need to repeat it again in 12 hours. We get it wrong again, we need to go back to 4 hours. So you can see how information has the potential to just constantly go back and forth between these boxes without you ever having effectively cleared it. Because you want to get to the point where you don't have to repeat it for at least the next few months, or at least until your exam or assessment. Otherwise, you're just going to continue accumulating more things to repeat. Now, the Leitner system is often talked about when it comes to flashcards, but it's actually the same for basically any other type of revision that is based on memorization. When you repeat something, you need to get to the point after repeating it that the gap between the review that you've just done and the next review is after your test or exam. Otherwise, by the time you set your test or exam, you may have forgotten that piece of information. When we look at it this way, we can see that information has the possibility to constantly flicker between these boxes so that every day we're adding new information from class or lectures that we are learning. And because we are forgetting very, very quickly, initially, it means that we're getting a lot of these wrong. And because we get a lot of them wrong, we're not able to progress and clear them sequentially. So the rate at which we get new information that we need to repeat is faster than the rate at which we can clear them. So 1 week later, instead of having just that week's worth of information to repeat, and then the week after that being clear of that and having the next week's worth of information, we may end up after 2 or 3 weeks having a full 2 or 3 weeks worth of information we are needing to repeat on maybe a single Saturday, which becomes not viable. And as time goes on, it gets harder and harder to hold on to this information. The retention actually ends up going down because now we're even more overloaded and it forms this negative spiral. So we have less time to study because we're spending so much time relearning the stuff that we are forgetting from previous study sessions. And then because we have less time to study, we're less able to retain the information we're learning now, which means that a week from now, we're going to have even more stuff that we forgot, which means that 2 weeks later, we're going to have even more that we need to revise. So it continues to build and build. And this is often why students that use systems like this that don't fundamentally change the rate of forgetting, these students who don't change the rate of forgetting and still forget things very quickly and struggle with this kind of constant re-revision, they will struggle in later years of high school or in university, especially when it comes to competitive degrees where everyone is an excellent student and now you have to be excellent among the excellent. A lot of the times people will fall off on the academics, which previously may have been their strength, because of the fact that they're using a system of studying that's mathematically not viable. It does work for some people, but the amount of time it takes is a lot. And also, you have to be a little bit lucky in that, thousands, if not millions of students will be studying with this kind of strategy. For the majority of these students, it's not going to allow them to achieve at the top level. And for the minority of students that do, they probably have an approach to learning that allows them to fundamentally shift this line so that our rate of forgetting is slower, so we actually don't need as many repetitions. So to summarize, spaced repetition is good, Leitner system is good, but if we're forgetting things very quickly because our approach to learning is very memorization based or very rote learning heavy, or we're spending lots of time studying, but after we finish writing our notes, we still don't have a clear idea about what we've written, then it means that we are setting ourselves up for sabotage later down the line, and that's not going to work. So we're changing the way that you're seeing that, and we're really going to be shifting your focus from this memorization focus of learning towards one that's a lot more sustainable and shifts that curve. So all the techniques that we teach later on in the course will teach you how to shift that curve fundamentally. But if this is the case, and there's actually other ways of learning, then there's a really interesting question that you have to ask yourself, which is, why is it that people only give tips on things like active recall and spaced repetition if all it's doing is helping you get better at a game that is already difficult to win. Why aren't people talking more about how to change the game entirely? Why aren't people talking more about how to shift this curve? Why do people only give advice on when to do these repetitions, how to do these repetitions? When to do it as spaced repetition, how to do it as active recall. And the reason is because people only give tips on what they know. And there is a lot of information out there. I'll be using the terms neuroscience and neuropsychology and learning neuropsychology throughout the course. When I talk about neuropsychology, we're really talking about the frameworks and theories behind how learning works. Whereas when we talk about neuroscience, we're talking about more at a physiological basis, neurotransmitters, neuroplasticity, and how neurons from a biological point of view allow the frameworks and theories of neuropsychology to play. When you look at the research in these fields, you'll find that there is a lot of findings on different methods and approaches to learning that are not at all mainstream, yet can be extremely effective. Now, most people don't know that simply because it's not already common, it's not taught in schools, most teachers aren't trained in this. In fact, most people, unless they're in educational research, wouldn't really know about this. And so even though the knowledge is out there, it's not like I'm summoning it from the universe myself directly, the information is there. However, it's kind of hidden behind a lot of research articles and things, and it's very difficult for a student like yourself to actually take that and do something meaningful with it, whereas something like spaced repetition or active recall, Pomodoro technique, these are things that you can learn straight away, you can apply straight away. Yes, they're effective, but again, it doesn't change the fundamental game. And unfortunately, because of the Dunning-Kruger effect, the level of confidence that people have that are giving advice tends to be reflective of overall a low level of knowledge. So if you look at this graph, you'll see that there is a really high level of confidence when you know a little bit, because compared to knowing nothing, that's a lot. However, as you start to learn more and more, you realize that there's so much more about this that you don't know. Your confidence goes down, and then it starts picking up again slowly over years and years of time, when you realize that actually you are becoming an expert across all these years. But this first point, this highest point of confidence, when there's not a lot of effort, this is actually called Mount Stupid. And so a lot of people are well-intentionally on Mount Stupid. They know a little bit about studying, they've had a little bit of experience, they've tried certain things before, and they think, wow, this is the best thing ever, and they teach it and they're very, very confident about it, but actually they haven't spent years and thousands of hours working with students, looking at the research, experimenting with it, not only themselves, but with other students as well, to see what works. So when we introduce some of these techniques to you, some of them will be easy, some of them will be hard. Keep in mind that when I use a technique and I demonstrate it to you, it may seem a lot easier when I'm doing it, but that's because I've spent over 10 years in this process and I've had a lot more experience down this journey. You can't expect to get this perfect straight away. You do have to spend a little bit of time to practice some of these techniques. Some of them you will be able to use straight away, some of them will require practice, but that's where that hard work, effort, diligence, dedication really comes in. And at the end of the day, it's actually very logical to think about all of this, because if you're just studying the same way as everyone else and everyone is kind of giving you the same advice, then you got to wonder, how good can you possibly be by doing the same thing as everyone else? And so to help yourself free yourself from the Dunning-Kruger curve and know exactly how much you do know about it, a really simple activity that you can do is think about what conditions are necessary in order for your belief or opinion to be true. And I actually want you to do this activity with me. So there are a number of different beliefs that people have, and there are very specific conditions in which this belief would actually be true. So let's have a look at some of these. So there are a number of misconceptions that people have about learning and what it takes to be a successful student. And as someone who, I would say, I have been a successful student and have worked with a lot of students that were previously unsuccessful and transforming them to become successful, There are a few ones that I've picked as my favorites, and so let's do this activity together where we look at what are the conditions in order for these statements to be true. One of the first ones is, how good can you be by doing the same thing as pretty much everyone else? Well, in order for you to use the same techniques as everyone else and to perform significantly better than them, the conditions in which that must be true are that either you are very lucky or that you try significantly harder. Now, the lucky one is kind of stupid. We all know that we don't want to create a plan based on us being lucky. However, the effort one is a little bit more nuanced. So the thing is that the amount of effort you put in obviously has an impact on the results that you're going to get. However, when you're trying to get to a very top level of performance, let's say you're not aiming to be in the top 10%, but you're aiming to be in the top 1% or the top 0.1% or even less of students either locally or nationwide, especially if you're at university and everyone in your class was in the top 1% and you need to be in the top 10% of them. When you look at it in that perspective, then even if everyone tries their hardest, the way you try is actually going to make a massive difference. So, first of all, at those high levels, everyone is trying hard. So if you want to be 20% better than someone, but you can only try 3% harder, obviously the maths on that doesn't really stack up. But even if everyone is trying their best, people are going to have different results. And we see this very commonly with highly competitive degrees. We see this a lot with the medical field, people trying to enter into medical school. Everyone is trying extremely, extremely hard, and yet still only a very small percentage of those people will actually succeed. The reason is because it's less about the effort you put in, and it's more about the direction in which you're putting that effort in, so that when you put the effort in, you actually go in the direction that you want to be going. So the conditions for same techniques but different results to be true is either substantially more effort or you're just a lot luckier. So obviously that ends up being a misconception. The reality is that you can't really get that much better by doing the same thing as other people. Generally, people that perform better are doing things better, they're behaving better, they're studying differently, they're using different processes, and it could be as simple as the way they're writing notes, but often it is more complex and there's an entire system that's built around that. Another favorite of mine is that people have different learning styles. So in order for people to have different learning styles, for example, often people will say, I can't learn through reading and writing, or I can't learn through someone speaking to me. In order for that to be true, the condition that needs to be met is that your human brain is incapable of learning that way effectively. The truth is that the research shows, and is what many educational psychologists and researchers will comment on, is that the human brain is an incredibly powerful learning machine and is adept at learning in a multitude of different ways and in a multitude of different environments for a multitude of different disciplines. So generally speaking, you can learn in virtually every style. However, the extension of this is that people do have different preferences and there are different things that you're trained at. But again, what the research shows is that those who train themselves at learning through multiple styles of learning and have stronger preferences for mixed mode learning rather than single focus learning, they consistently are able to outperform and get better exam and test results as well. Another assumption about learning is that most learning is done through rote learning or memorization. The condition for that to be true is that your brain is not capable of learning this material more effectively through anything other than rote learning and memorization. We know this is not true because you don't apply this method of thinking to anything else you learn in your life. If you learn hobbies or sports or play a game or watch a TV show or a movie or read a book, you have a very high level of retention on that, but you're not really studying it and you're not trying to memorize it. You naturally have a very high level of retention on it because you're using a different approach to learning. Some of those approaches I will be teaching you very shortly in the course coming up. So again, the condition for that to be true, we know it doesn't make sense. And again, what the research shows is that you can shift that curve so that you don't need to be rote learning and memorizing. It is possible to learn things to a very high level of retention and a high level of recall through other processes that are not pure rote memorization. Another common assumption: there's no other way to study other than the way that I'm used to or I've heard from seniors or friends or family friends or something like that. That's just frankly not true. We have hundreds of students that we work and have worked with thousands of students in the past where they are learning a different way and they are getting that top 1%, top 0.5% result, and they are using a different approach. And in a couple months from now, you also will be one of those people. You will see the light and you'll be able to do that. So you don't have to take my word for it. You can just apply the techniques and start seeing the difference for yourself. Or better yet, jump onto the Discord community, talk to some people that are ahead of you and hear it from them themselves how the way they're learning is fundamentally different to how they used to learn. There are other ways, and I personally used these other ways for a large proportion of my learning, and it worked for me a lot better and it's much less stressful, and these are results we're consistently able to get. So we can demonstrate that that's not true through purely the proof of our students themselves. And potentially one of my favorite assumptions to disprove is the idea that this is something that you can start picking up and getting better at instantaneously. Learning to study is a skill. Learning to study is a skill. It's a skill just like learning to play basketball. You wouldn't expect that someone can give you a basketball, explain to you how to do the technique, and then you can, within a few minutes, do the technique perfectly. You wouldn't expect that. In fact, you would expect that you would be pretty terrible for the first few weeks, maybe few months, maybe even few years of practice. Now, I'm not saying it's going to take a few years for you to get really good at these techniques, but I am saying that it does take time, it does take practice, it is a skill. You can't just read about it and then think, oh, I understand that, and therefore assume that you will be able to use the technique effectively. A lot of the time we get students who are coming in, using the course, they're going through and they're rushing it, they're understanding what they read, but they can't apply anything. They can't apply what they read because they haven't been actually practicing it. They don't have experience under their belt. So they're the person that has been reading about playing basketball and expecting they'll be good, and then complaining about the fact that they're not any good at dribbling or shooting or pretty much any aspect of the game because they don't have practice. So it is a skill. You can't develop it instantly. It does take time and commitment. And a lot of students have a mentality that you can just put a little bit of effort in and you will just get really, really good at it. That is not only underestimating and undervaluing the complexity of the skill itself. Something this valuable, this honestly life-changing, is something that does require an investment of effort as your personal payment for reaping the benefits of using a system like that. And it's also underestimating yourself and the effort that you are able to put in to get to something, your strength of character, your own level of diligence, your own strength of commitment and determination to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. If you have got goals that are ambitious, that you know are going to be challenging, it's going to take work. You know it's going to take work. You need to be prepared to put in that work to practice the skills that are going to get you there. And the most important aspect about going through this course is that you look at it in terms of the marginal gains that you get. And one more, potentially one of the most toxic, damaging assumptions of all, which is that the way to stop falling behind is to get more tutoring. And this is counterintuitive for a lot of people because they think, hey, tutoring is going to help me get better grades, but at what cost? So the way tutoring works is often access to more resources or access to someone explaining something to you in a way that's easier for you to understand. However, if you are at especially a high school level or even earlier, then this is incredibly damaging because the problem is not that you don't understand the topic. The problem is that you didn't know how to understand it. You weren't able to understand that piece of information. If someone else is explaining it to you, the question is, why didn't you understand that yourself? Why did you need someone to explain it to you? And so what happens is that tutoring becomes a crutch, and it leads to something that's well observed in educational research called the fade out effect, where people will forego the development of their own independent studying skills and instead rely on tutors to facilitate their learning, which means that eventually one day when tutoring is not an option, which creeps up on people a lot due to either financial reasons or because tutoring is just not available, for example, in university, they really struggle. And what the research shows is that they struggle more than the students who didn't get any tutoring. So short term, there may be a benefit to tutoring because you're literally given these answers and resources. However, long term, it reduces your resourcefulness and your own ability to navigate the topic, think about these things, and create your own learning, which is actually why we discourage students from getting tutoring, especially at a high school level, because overall what we've found is that it makes things worse. So we have a lot of experience working with university students, and what we find is that consistently the students in university that perform the worst and struggle the most, they are actually the ones that got the most tutoring at a high school level. So what's the condition in order for tutoring is the answer to me not falling behind being true? The only way that that works is if tutoring is something that you can always rely on, and the only other thing is that the reason you're falling behind is a lack of explanation or information or resource. But most of the time, the reason you're falling behind is because you didn't have the skill to keep you up to date yourself. So it's really fixing like a symptom, not the cause. It's better to fix the cause, learn the skills that's going to keep you on track, and then you're not going to need tutoring. So the stuff that we teach is going to stop you from falling behind with your schoolwork. It's going to make sure that you are on track. If you are worried about falling behind, about overwhelming assignments and tests and study and homework that you need to do, using these techniques is what allows you to escape from that endless grind and become a little bit more free with your time, because you're able to study faster than the rate at which they can give you more things to study. And that's a very liberating feeling that I hope that all of you are able to feel as well by the end of this.